Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Swaroop, CEO and co founder of DataHub. I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, humans spent a lot of time finding data that is useful for their analysis. They filed tickets to get access, they waited days to get that access, and then when they finally produced the insights, it was way too late for it to have any impact. Of course, we all know that once upon a time is actually now. Humans are struggling with this problem as we speak. But my point is, this whole problem is going to get a whole lot worse. How many of you use Claude Code? Okay, hands are going up. So I'm sure you know this, but 90% of Claude Code's code is generated by Claude Code. Think about that. We are already at a time when humans are producing less code than AI for building real products. And in 2028, we'll have super intelligence. It's going to happen. I've been in enough events to know that it's actually happening. So you better believe it. In 12 to 18 months' time, AI agents will send way more traffic to our data systems than all human analysts combined. Maybe I'm wrong on it by 6 months. Doesn't matter. But the fact is it's happening. And the agentic future will actually arrive sooner than we all think. And the thing is, our data foundations are just not ready to handle the complexity that all these agents will throw at us. So what we actually need is a context management platform, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But before we talk about the agentic future, let's trace the evolution from where we are to that future. So meet Brock. He's your favorite analyst. He's just been asked by the chief revenue officer to go and investigate why sales has dropped 20% in Southeast region. And he has 48 hours to do it because there's a board meeting and he has to find the root cause. So 50 plus Slack messages later, Brock goes through several outdated documents and finally arrives at 5 tables that are all called sales underscore final underscore V2. They all sound like the right thing to use, right? And then he has to file tickets to get access. Then he waits a few more hours. Finally gets access to the thing that he thinks will help him solve the problem. But he runs into all kinds of data quality issues. There's a field called region, but that field has various types of things that are not standardized. I'm sure you're all seeing this in your everyday lives, right? The key point is Brock spends 42 hours on data discovery, 6 hours on analysis, and then he goes to his chief revenue officer and says, okay, here's what I found. And the CRO says, great, thank you for this, but I need you to dig into one more thing to truly explain what happened. So 48 hours later, we're still not close to the truth. And this is just a summary of what I've heard over and over again from many, many customers and companies in the community that we regularly interact with. But imagine this scenario. Instead of one Brock, there are thousands of agents doing all kinds of analysis simultaneously, and they all run into the same set of problems. Problems of fragmentation, access, data quality issues, but they're all going to happen at machine speed and scale. And that's the complexity that I was talking about, where our foundations are just not set up for that. And you really need a context management platform to handle this world where you're going to have humans. Humans are still important. I keep saying that in this conference, humans are still important, but you have to think about the machines. They're coming. So we've taken the first step towards building this context management platform with the DataHub MCP server. Show of hands, how many of you know about MCP, Model Context Protocol? Okay, fair number of hands. For the others, maybe I'll give you a 30-second primer. Model Context Protocol is this standard that came out of Anthropic. It's been adopted by OpenAI and other vendors too. think of it as the universal language that AI uses to speak to all data sources in your organization, right? So it's a way for uh, any data source to push information to the model, or the model can pull. It doesn't matter, but you don't have to figure out the protocol. The standard allows you to expose your internal data sources using that. So um, building an MCP server by itself is not the hard part. The standard is well specified enough that people can stand it up. The hard part is context engineering. Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a trending topic now if you go and check out Twitter. Context engineering is this art and science where you have to be careful about packing in the right information at the right time. Otherwise, you can easily confuse the LLMs, at least in their current incarnation. I think they'll get better. The foundation models, 12 months now, will be not even comparable. But as it stands, it's important that you are working around their limitations. And the DataHub MCP server has been designed to supply the right metadata at the right time so that the foundation model can come back and ask the next complicated question instead of overwhelming the model from the get-go and causing all kinds of hallucinations. So with that important implementation detail, let's talk about the actual capabilities. Agents will be able to discover data based on semantics of data. Like if you're a pharma company and you want to actually have an agent analyze some clinical trial studies for a recent drug that the company has come up with, you want the agent to ask questions based on semantics. Hey, give me clinical trial data for this drug for cancer where the patients have given consent to the type of analysis I want to make. But think about that sentence. There's so many semantic concepts back into that. And you have to translate that into how you actually source the right context from across your enterprise, right? So discovering data based on semantics, and then understanding reliability indicators based on important signals like lineage, data quality history, and popularity signals. These are all important. And finally, compliance context, right? Obviously, you don't want agents to go rogue in the enterprise. You need to give them the right compliance context so that they can either use it or go reauthorize themselves and come back and use it. So the MCP server has been designed to work with any MCP enabled tool. Cursor is a good example. How many people use Cursor here? Okay. Cursor is a very popular IDE that has MCP integration, which means all of the context is immediately surfaced there. I have a demo coming soon. And it's also available to humans in tools like Claude Desktop or even Slack and Teams, which I'll go through in a bit. So this is a quick example of how Brock would use natural language in Claude Desktop to understand what are the data sets that he should be using for his analysis. As you can see, there's quite a lot of rich information here to help him navigate. Okay, there's all these different data sources, but it looks like I can ask this next follow-up question about this order details table and then get enough rich context to understand the governance history, the data quality history, the popularity. All of these signals are summarized in an effective way for him to go and take that next step. Maybe I should be using this in my analysis, and then I'll come back and again talk to this agent where, hey, I tried using it. This is what I found. Do you have something else? So that it enables that cross-session investigation, which is really powerful. So in a future iteration of this, there will be other autonomous agents which will help Brock with getting access just in time or getting the agent compliance context just in time. But the point is, whatever it takes, hours, multiple hours, if not days, can now be done in order of minutes. And this is serious boost in productivity. So we have all this great promise. What could go wrong, right? Um, MCP is one way of sourcing information. Of course, DataHub is one MCP server. There are other MCP servers out there. Like Jira has its own MCP server. HubSpot has its own MCP server. And it's very likely that enterprises will start exposing their internal microservices as MCP services, right? If I think the data integration pattern itself is going through an interesting change. I think we as data people have been so used to ETL as the predominant data integration pattern. I think it remains to be seen whether that continues to be the dominant pattern going forward, where you have to get everything into a central place before you can act on it. In the presence of agents coming up and them wanting instant access to context, will they really wait for humans to first run some data pipelines and put it in a? It remains to be seen. I think it has its place. Of course, you want some context to be enriched carefully, not just sling all kinds of dirty data at agents. So there is a place for that, but it can get quite a lot done with just going where the data is already. So again, I don't want to bet on any one thing right now. We just should like watch for what will happen, whether ETL will continue to be the dominant pattern. So in any event, there'll be a proliferation of MCP servers and various other capabilities that are exposed to these agents. And that's fragmentation, right? So context is now fragmented. So how do we deal with that problem? The first step is when an agent has a task on hand, you have to first even help the agent filter all the tools on all the capabilities and efficiently discover what is even available for me to answer this question. So that's the first step, the tool filtering step. So you need the platform, the underlying platform to be able to support that. The second problem is reliability. Especially as agents start to depend on more longer term memory for doing their jobs, or agent to agent handoffs where they have to pass on enough information for the next agent to do its job. You have to have enough reliability indicators. Things like what is the freshness of this context, what is the accuracy, what is the provenance. These things have to be available. And the last problem really is agents are not just passive things. They're not just reading. They're also very active. They're editing, writing, deleting, and you better have a good picture of dependencies and ownership. Otherwise, you're going to have uncontrolled changes and chain reactions in your ecosystem. So what is the solution? You need a context management platform that harmonizes everything and is able to be that source of truth across all of this landscape of context, right? And DataHub is that, will be that, if we're taking steps towards that. So just getting back to how to enable humans with this MCP server, one thing we've found is humans do a lot of work in Teams and Slack where they have their flow, they don't want to be interrupted. And how do you make sure they're productive wherever they're doing their work currently? So this is an example of Maggie trying to debug a very subtle discrepancy in a business metric. And she's trying to understand what broke the metric, right? Usually something like this will need navigating very complex lineage and understanding at each transit point what is the transformation logic. Did someone introduce a bug in this transit point? And it takes hours, if not days, to do that, right? But what we have found is you can get to some of those things in minutes. Again, I know like some of you might be a little skeptical. Hey, what about the right enrichment that you need for agents to be able to do this? But what I have found is the LLMs are really good at dealing with imperfect information and closing the gaps and trying to give you the best possible answer for you to go back and validate. And the important thing is right now in this incarnation, it's unidirectional, but this should be bidirectional, where the experts have an incentive to not just accept the answer, but actually come back and say, hey, here's some more business context I want to give you. so that you give me a better answer next time. Or here's some business context I'll give you that will help these 5 other business users, right? Cracking those collaborative experiences is going to be key, because it's not just about answering the question, it's about putting humans at the center of this experience, because humans still hold all the business context, at least for now, till we all get replaced. So that's important to make sure that the UX actually factors in and is actually built for the LLM being wrong and humans validating everything, right? So the next step is developers. Developers have AI in their IDE now. I was talking to you about Cursor, and one of the most common use cases that we see is how do you refactor large code bases to handle a change? Or how do you create new DBT models based on all this contextual information that you have? And how do you do it in a lineage aware way while you understand the downstream impact to the changes that you're about to make? And how do you know the quality history so that if you're declaring some dependencies, you are protected from not depending on things that are not high quality? So these are all things which allow you to validate your code even before it hits production. And we are seeing people being really successful with this use case in our community. So any questions so far? Like, I just wanted to get a quick poll of how many of you are deploying agents in production, one in a Copilot manner. Let me just see a quick raise of hands. Okay. Yeah. How many of you have deployed anything which is fully autonomous in production? Yeah. 0. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a good read of the room. I do think this picture will change in like 9 months, but I'll come back and talk to you. So when you think about your organization, um, and if you look at all these personas that exist, data engineer, data analyst, and software engineer, you can think of their digital twins or AI twins, the data engineer agent, the analyst agent, the software engineer agent, right? One can ask the question, how are their needs different, right? Um, the first thing to notice is both of them need context. Context is an absolute requirement. Now, humans need a bit more of a visual interface to navigate all of this. So a rich search UI to navigate through the complexity. Rich lineage interfaces. All of that is important for humans to be able to grok all the complexity across maybe 50 different data platforms. And I think the agents can deal with a lot more complexity thrown at them. But I think the intuition that humans have to work around things that are obviously wrong, is something that agents will not naturally have. So it's not a question of what they want. It's really more around how they will interact with the underlying context layer, right? Like, some of the signals are listed here: lineage, documentation, quality. There are like 20 other signals. It's not just point in time. You need history, right? You need how was the lineage 6 months ago? How has it, like, you need the context to be time oriented, not just point in time. But the thing to notice is humans can work around things that look obviously wrong. Agents cannot. Whereas agents can work around missing information, and humans sometimes may not be able to do that. So it's really the how, and the underlying data will also start to evolve. As I was saying, the proliferation of MCP servers is something that you're going to see in 6 months, in 9 months, and so on, right? So what does the context management platform have to offer as the primitives for this? The being able to support a history of actions that have been taken in the presence of incorrect information. That is also important information. That's net new information for a new agent coming online. What are the types of things that have been successfully done before? What are the things that were attempted but resulted in failure? Or what are the handoffs between agents that actually worked and didn't work? All of this history that builds over time is actually the institutional memory that is very important. In addition to the memory that the agent needs to do its own task. Um, and then, when it comes to handoffs, we actually have to think about long-lived context handoffs, not just within a session. Like, how do you hand it off? Context, how long should it survive? Like, who determines that, right? So all of these new problems will emerge as the context management platform gets built out for the agents. And so we are just at the beginning of this. I think a lot of these things will emerge. So what could go wrong in the presence of so many bots? Obviously, I've mentioned some of these things. You could have bots kind of coming up with the wrong conclusions and handing off the wrong context to the next agent and all that. But I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think with the right context management platform, you will have stronger guarantees from the get-go about how uh, this particular session with the agent should go. So we are right in the middle of building this. The DataHub community is a large community. We have tastemakers that are shaping this as we speak. There are more than 13,000 members in the community. There are more than 3,000 production deployments of DataHub, and it's a fast-growing community. And we have some of the best companies in the world not just using it, like companies like Apple, Netflix, Pinterest, Visa. They're also contributing to it. So you really have the world's best tastemakers in our community coming and shaping this future that we're building together. I am going to be speaking more about this as well, like, the topic of governance and how AI is going to play a role there with Andrew Mohammed from Ovo Energy. Please join me there. It's happening tomorrow. We also have a booth here right across the theater, K120. I would love to meet many of you and continue the conversation. So please get involved. Join the DataHub community. Like I said, it's a big community, thriving community, and we have the world's best people talking about these types of problems. With that, I will take questions.
Imagine how baby.
Got a lot of different organizations trying to take a different approach to also how context engineering should be done. So if you speak to organizations who come from a graph background, they've got a different approach on how it would be done. You guys coming from a data cataloging background would have a different approach. Do you see, data catalog, enterprise ontology, context, all in effect coming as part of a collective bundle, which is what you use for human information discovery, but also for agentic information discovery? Is that how you guys see it going?
Yeah, I mean, the existing ontologies will play a huge role, obviously. Stephen is standing at the back, who's like an expert in ontologies. He's joined the DataHub team, where, like there's existing ways of representing information. I think it continue to play a big role in bootstrapping the agentic understanding of what exists, at least in data-centric environments, right? When you have a microservice that we have no idea about and someone has just slapped an MCP server in front of it, I think some of this will not translate. So for the data world, I do see that, using existing ontologies and also bootstrapping ontologies with the collaborative UX with the humans that I was talking about, that will play a huge role in enriching the right semantics. And in terms of actually packing in the just enough information so you're not like confusing the LLM, I think that again requires the evaluation histories to be part of the platform to see what went right, what went wrong, and use that history to also iterate. Did I answer your question? I just want to make sure we're.
how do you then see, say, something like LangGraph and their approach to context engineering differing from what, say, a Neo4j would look to do, for example? And how do you also then get the reverse loop back off those agents and those applications running and get that feedback loop back into a data hub which acts at the cataloging layer of the information being presented?
Good question. So DataHub does not have an interest in getting into the orchestration layer when it comes to agent orchestration. We are in the context business, right? So we will build integrations with some of these frameworks, which allows us to be the exhaust for what's actually happening in that world. We don't expect everyone to come to DataHub and give us the information. So it's important to build those integrations so that the exhaust flows through to us.
My name is Thomas Hergen from Talent Solutions. We are a consultancy company in AI and BenTech. How do you convince banks to use your tool? I mean, because of compliance perspective and safety perspective.
So we're already deployed in some banks. So that's already happening. I think the way we think about the evolution of the market is a lot of the companies right now are just trying to get ready for AI, where they're going beyond human methods to more automation and operational consistency. In my experience, that's where most of the banks are. And the next stage after that is the agentic world and AI in production and so on. So I think that message seems to resonate with the banks, where it'll help you get to kind of AI readiness and operational consistency, and your human methods are just not scaling. And from there on, some of the banks have been very excited about using MCP for cursor and all that. So
thank you for the talk. Have you seen any challenges with the rollout of credentials with MCPs and the how you're managing credentials against the MCP code?
yeah, good question. I think this is kind of a phased approach for us, where you have to ultimately kind of take on the identity of the person who's asking that question, and you have to respect the permissions that have already been set up. So, as of now, since a lot of this is about metadata, we are able to implement some of the global policies, but the next step on our roadmap is actually implement those identity specific rules. All right. Any more questions? You all have been a great audience. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference.